We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Now, for the first of a trilogy of programs, the cameras follow 6 astronauts as they train for a job that's out of this world.
The Space Shuttle Endeavour is the newest in NASA's fleet of 4 reusable spacecraft. It was commissioned to replace Challenger, which exploded shortly after takeoff in January 1986, killing all on board. This is the story of Endeavour's 10th journey into space, just 10 years later. The first time NASA has allowed anyone to film the inside story of a mission and the lives of the astronauts from the day they are chosen until they return to Earth over a year later.
Bye. You guys have a good day at school. Okay, I'll see you later. Bye.
Brian Duffy, colonel in the US Air Force, astronaut, and pilot of 2 previous shuttle missions, will be the commander of flight STS-72. There are over 100 US astronauts based at the Johnson Space Center, which sprawls for miles across the southern suburbs of Houston, Texas. Houston is America's space capital. This is where the astronauts live and train, and mission control is here. There have been over 200 astronauts since manned spaceflight began 35 years ago. The road into the Johnson Space Center is lined with rockets and spacecraft of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs. The Space Shuttle has been flying for 15 years, and Brian Duffy will command its 72nd mission. This is the inside story of the 6 men chosen to be the crew of mission STS-72. Just before Christmas 1994, Chief Astronaut Bob Cabana announced the news at the astronauts' weekly meeting.
I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the STS-72 crew. It will consist of Commander Brian Duffy, Brent, Jett, Koichi, Wakata, Dan Barry, and where's Leroy, Chiao? And last but certainly not least, Winston Scott.
Good way to start a Monday morning.
Congratulations.
All right. Hey, there's the boss.
It's going to be fun.
Good to have you around. Hey, thank you.
Congratulations.
All right. From the first EVA hog to the second.
Like that.
Winston, about time, man. Yeah, sure is.
Hey, you didn't say a word last night.
I didn't know last night.
4 of the astronauts chosen are new boys who haven't flown before, graduates of the class of 1992.
And 4 of us on one ride. I didn't know last night. I found out this morning. Now, what did you say when you really remember? This morning, that's right. What a way to start a Monday morning. Oh, I gotta go call home.
We're going to have a good time. We got a lot to do. But
Crew training will take about a year. STS-72's main mission will be to capture a Japanese satellite. They will also carry out a series of spacewalks, testing tools and building techniques for the International Space Station.
kind of like to get us together just to spend a little bit of time and kind of bring folks up to speed on what's been going on with the flight so far. And I know you know parts of it, you know parts of it, and I think I know probably how the whole thing fits together. So so maybe we can get together this afternoon. So. How about you? How you?
I'm pretty open this afternoon.
Okay. You want to say 1 o'clock?
1 o'clock. Okay.
1 o'clock.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Okay. Okay. So we get together at 1.
All right.
Okay.
In your office?
In your office? Yeah, my office.
Okay. I better go call home.
Yeah, you better call home.
Don't do that too.
Hello.
Hi. How are you doing?
Yes.
You sound as though you're anticipating something. Don't I always call at 8:35 in the morning?
No, you don't. I did not say anything last night, and I did not say anything this morning.
Well, that's good.
And we were very quiet, weren't we?
Good. Well, guess what?
You've been assigned.
That's right. They announced the 72 crew this morning, and yours truly is MS2, flying engineer on the crew. So that's really something, isn't it?
That's nice.
Yeah, it is. It is. Brian Duffy is the commander.
Winston Scott will be the 7th black American to travel into space and the 2nd to spacewalk.
Brent, Jett, Koichi, Dan Barry, and myself.
Whatever language you get asked a question in, just answer in that. And I would suggest that if it's in English, briefly restate the question in Japanese and then answer it again in Japanese.
Koichi Wakata is the first Japanese astronaut to be fully trained by NASA.
It'll be pretty
He's 32 and one of the youngest space travelers. His special task will be to capture his own country's satellite with Endeavour's robot arm. Ellington Field, the Space Centre's own airport. 25 years ago, Neil Armstrong practiced landing his lunar module here. Today, this is home for the astronauts' personal fleet of T-38 jets. Pilot astronauts must fly for 4 hours a week. The T-38s fly 700 miles an hour and can travel for 2 hours without refueling. The pilots use them like personal sports cars. The non-pilot astronauts use the T-38s as taxis, hitching lifts all over the USA from pilots keeping up their hours. Brent Jett will be the pilot of STS-72, Commander Brian Duffy's right-hand man.
Got tickets? You want to go? Yeah.
Brent Jett was top gun in the US Naval Academy, a star Navy fighter and test pilot before he joined the astronaut class of 1992. This is his first mission.
Bet they're good seats too. I mean, they're like company seats, you know.
Dr. Leroy Chiao was a materials engineer in California before he became an astronaut. This is his second space flight, and he will be STS-72's chief spacewalker. Dr. Dan Barry is the odd man out on this crew. An academic with double doctorates in engineering and medicine, he's also a millionaire who invented and patented a successful running shoe. He's another member of the class of 92. A 6-hour spacewalk will be the high point of the mission for him. The astronauts are based in Houston, but their spacecraft and the teams who maintain them are at the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral in Florida.
NASA 955, contact Miami Center 133.9. 955, switch to Miami 133.9. 555, Sierra Delta, Miami Center, roger, and good afternoon.
The astronauts travel back and forth between Houston and Florida in their T-38 jets, 800 miles in an hour and a half. Coming in to land at Kennedy, they pass over the 2 shuttle launch pads.
Should be with you in about 15 minutes. Want to check on your weather. Band 3, roger. NASA 955, roger. Warp good BM 43000. Scanner visibility is 10. 1050 at 11. Gust 20. Altimeter 3006.
Launch Pad 39B is a 340-foot steel tower. The first shuttle to use this pad was STS-51L, the ill-fated Challenger. This is the first of many visits for the crew of STS-72. Throughout their training, safety and emergency procedures will dominate their schedule.
Gives you a real good idea just how big it is when you get up here.
After it's all tanked, it'll start to make noise.
Yeah.
Growing and creep. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like it's alive when you come out on launch morning. You know, all the gases that are venting off. You know.
That's the big difference between TCDP and launch day.
Yeah. That and the fact that on launch day there aren't very many people out here.
Yeah, right.
As a matter of fact, just the crew and those that are going to strap you in, and that's it. Every other time you come out, you know, there are lots of folks working on the orbiter, getting it ready to go.
Yeah, that's what the fireman Buck said to us when he was teaching us the firefighting. He was saying, you need to learn this because when you're up here for real, Buck ain't going to be up here. You're on your own. That's right.
When the shuttle is ready to leave, the launch pad is a dangerous place. Endeavour's tanks contain over 2 million litres of highly explosive fuel. The astronauts, strapped in their seats for takeoff, are entirely on their own.
The pad here has an emergency system in case there's a fire. If we were inside before launch and something happened and we needed to get out, and if there was a fire out there, they have if you notice these nozzles all along here as we come down, they'd be activated. They'd be dousing the area with water. There's an arm and a flow, the 2 paddles that are retracted right there. They'll actually be out when we're in the vehicle. They'll set those before they leave after strapping us in.
So you can't miss them as you come through.
Right, you can't miss them. You come out, you hit those, it activates this system here, and then we'll do everything in the buddy system where there'll be 2 of us, so that way we're always looking out for each other. And your visibility will be really poor as you come through here. You'll have your visor down, water will be pouring on it, so that's why we have these arrows and the yellow walkway on the floor, so as looking down you can keep track of it, and you work your way over towards the emergency escape baskets and go out there. And one person will be in the lead, and the other person generally just keeps a hand on the harness or something. Just keep in contact and always make sure you got your buddy with you, so that we do everything on the buddy system. Keeps everybody safe and ensures that we'll all get out of here. You could think of the vehicle as being a potential bomb.
The large orange tank contains the fuel to power Endeavour's 3 main engines. The white tanks are the solid rocket boosters. They burn for 2 minutes to provide extra power for takeoff. It was an O-ring, one of the black rubber joint seals on the solid rocket booster, which leaked and caused the Challenger disaster. On January the 28th, 1986, Challenger was launched with 7 astronauts on board. It was the second attempt. The weather was very cold in Florida, and ice kept forming on the launch pad.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Now control. Roger, roll, Challenger. Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading downrange.
No one watching what looked like a successful launch could tell that fuel was leaking from the booster.
Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles for most of the flight, 104%. We'll throttle down to 65% shortly.
73 seconds after blastoff, Challenger exploded.
1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles. Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction. The vehicle apparently exploded, and that impact in the water at a point approximately 28.64 degrees north, 80.28 degrees west.
The crew of STS-72 know that most of the real dangers of their mission are packed into the first few minutes after takeoff and the last hour of their return journey to Earth. In the months of training to come, 80% of the astronauts' work will be learning how to deal with emergencies which could endanger their lives and destroy the Space Shuttle Endeavour.
B1.
Before the Challenger accident, astronauts went to the launch pad in unpressurized flying suits. Today's flame-proof and heat-proof orange safety suits have been designed to give a better chance of survival in an emergency at takeoff or landing. With helmets on and visors down, astronauts can breathe oxygen from a supply in their suits.
It's not quite there. We can get it.
How useful these suits would be in a big fire or explosion is never discussed. The astronauts are trained to believe they can escape from any disaster.
Have a sit down and we'll go ahead and load your pocket.
You're ready.
I'm ready.
You want to go up and get us tucked in?
Okay.
It'll take a few minutes. No one wanted any more?
Pick up the back.
You didn't want any? Linda, you want
Yes,
some?
I'll have two. Thank you.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Help yourself.
There are 5 shuttle trainers at the Johnson Space Center. All have seen heavy service since the shuttle began flying in 1981. The space program has suffered major budget cuts for years, and there is no spare money to invest in hardware. The astronauts work with a very small training team. These instructors are assigned to STS-72 from the first day of training to the last. The computer programs they use to train the astronauts are updated after every mission. The astronauts are debriefed for hours about their experiences when they return, and everything they have learned goes to improve the training of the next crew. Every training session is like a computer game with 2 competing teams. The crew on the flight deck, their teachers in the control room. In simulators, which are an exact replica of Endeavour down to the last switch, the astronauts spend a year learning to rescue themselves from really difficult situations. A fire in an engine, a fuel supply failure, a forced landing in North Africa or Bermuda. This is the everyday stuff of training. The astronauts are strapped in their seats just as they will be on board Endeavour. Commander and pilot are side by side, just as they would be on an airliner.
All right, there, here we go. One helmet.
Okay, next.
Okay, yeah, tab it in.
Want to front front? Here,
Oh, yeah.
Winston Scott and Koichi Wakata will sit behind the commander and the pilot for takeoff. Through the hours of simulation, their job is to check the procedures, while the front seat look for a way out of the problems which appear with distressing regularity.
I bet it's in your box. Yeah, it's up there. Get ready, it's going to Face City.
The training teams are scientists who specialize in the different systems on board the shuttle. One instructor is responsible for each system, and a supervisor is in overall control. After liftoff, it takes about 8 minutes for the space shuttle to reach orbit. This is the most critical phase of any spaceflight.
Is he doing it?
The training team work from a script which includes planned malfunctions to test the crew.
We go post landing.
Copy.
Yeah, we're not ready. Okay, we're all with you, and we're probably ready to go to run. Okay, here we go. Okay, T-minus 9, guys. Everybody, Koichi, you hear me okay?
You're not connected yet.
Endeavour OTC, go for launch.
Roger, go for launch.
Just a few seconds after launch, a fuel leak is programmed into the computer.
leak's in. Can you call up ASIM over there, please?
ASIM?
Yes, please.
Endeavour Houston, we see a large left RCS leak. Select no yaw jet and secure the left RCS.
You got it. Very good.
Secure left
You
RCS.
can check the switch throw up there when he throws it. And it looks like he selected it. It's just not coming up right away.
The fuel leak is spotted in seconds by Brent Jett. He identifies the correct valve and closes it off.
Oh, but he didn't have closed here, so if you close, and these ones can cross-strap for that. So he did it right.
Yeah, okay.
He did fine.
It doesn't say here to do close, so I didn't know that he needed to take that close. I hadn't heard of that.
The shuttle is 28 miles above the Earth and travelling at 3,000 miles an hour. The instructors program an engine failure into the computer.
Roger, pressed ATO.
Right engine. Right engine's down.
Okay.
Do you see it?
We're at ATO. Houston, we have to show the right engine down. Understand, pressed ATO. Got a time?
And Endeavour, we show right engine down aboard ATO.
Okay, Koichi, ready to time it, Koichi? Okay, there's ATO selected in there. Ready, mark.
Endeavour Houston, we copy left engine down, push the button.
The astronauts are trained how to react to emergencies, but all decisions and instructions during the real mission come from here, Mission Control Houston. The flight director is in charge throughout the mission. 10 seconds after liftoff, control is passed to him by the launch director at Kennedy. It was in this room that the crisis of Apollo 13 was played out. The training of the flight director to react to emergencies happens at the same time as the training of the astronauts.
And booster copies flight, that contact is going to keep us remoting guidance. We can.
Okay, we got a contact failure in that
Endeavour
switch.
Houston,
Guidance
Brian,
or
we
booster,
have
any way to
contact
declare
failure
it?
on the left push button,
Yes,
and that's
sir.
keeping us from remoting guidance. We'll have
What do you
further.
want to do?
We can comp out FF3 and push it. If that doesn't work, bring it back up and comp out FF2. One of those.
Because you
will
don't know
work.
which one it is.
We just have to guess.
Guidance, what if we don't mode guidance here?
Not a good day flight on RTLS. Highly recommend we get guidance to recognize the engine.
Capcom, we'd like to try one at a time. FF2 off, hit the push button, I'll reset, then FF2 on, and I'll reset.
Endeavour Houston, Brian, we'd like you to take FF2 to off, try the push button, bring FF2 back up, and an IO reset.
You want the left arm's engine off?
Right.
Anything else?
That's it. Failed engine off. During dump, interconnect. Enable the interconnect.
Okay, we're there. And how about 9400? Is that off the charts?
I guess off the charts.
Okay, thanks.
No oxygen P on the left, so we're going to have to assume prop tail if we have a problem there.
Okay.
And flight booster.
Go ahead.
I've got all three LH2 flow control valves
Return.
open at this time. I suspect an LH leak. We'll have to wait until it drops below 31.6 to confirm.
Okay. Endeavour Houston, negative return.
Just a few minutes later, a fuel pressure leak is programmed in. This could lead to fuel starvation in the remaining engine.
Suspect we may get an ullage leak. You can keep an eye out. Possible ullage leak.
That was for the LH2?
It's LH2.
And flight, it is an LH leak.
Okay, you can confirm it?
I can confirm.
Endeavour Houston,
Want him to take
we
any
have
action?
an ullage leak,
I'll pass it
and
to
we'll
second flight.
pass up actions momentarily.
Okay, we need to take limits to hard enable flight.
Roger. Okay, going at 2 less than 31.6. I'd like to go open on the OH pressure.
That's correct, flight.
Okay, hard
The flight is in jeopardy. Endeavour is 80 miles out and travelling upside down at 10,000 miles an hour over the Atlantic. The shuttle is losing power and unable to continue in orbit. The flight controller orders an emergency landing in North Africa.
Okay, no way we can go uphill here.
Per the rules flight, we're supposed to abort for an ullage leak.
Okay, because we don't know when we're going to go out.
That's correct.
You ready to go tail the Ben Guerir? We got it, Fido?
Yes, sir. And Jules on board, flight.
Capcom, select Ben Guerir, abort tail.
And we do need to get manual throttles.
Endeavour Houston,
Manual throttles.
we
first.
need manual throttles first, then I need you to select Ben Guerir, abort tail.
Roger.
Thanks, Booster, for the call.
Copy, flight.
The shuttle crew stabilise the fuel pressure leak. On a single engine, they turn Endeavour towards Morocco. They manage a perfect landing at Ben Guerir. There will be 600 hours of training like this before flight STS-72 is ready to leave. The astronauts and the flight controllers daily pit their wits against the finest computer programs NASA can offer. The Outpost Tavern is a wooden shack on a piece of wasteland outside the gates of the Space Center. The very first astronauts did their drinking here, and the tradition lives on. The Outpost is like a space museum. There are pictures on the walls of every one of the 220 astronauts that there have been in the US space program, and there are photographs taken in space with special messages to the Outpost from the crew of every mission. The Outpost was originally at Ellington Field, the astronauts' airport, but the building was moved here in 1982, lock, stock, and beer barrel.
That is a big patch. You know what the only patch was that had no names on it? Shuttle, in the shuttle program? Oh no, in the history of, like, the... Actually, it should have been two. No, one. There's one that I know of. There's one.
Space trivia?
Yeah, in the whole history of manned spaceflight, U.S. manned spaceflight, there's only been one patch with no names on it.
Who's that?
There's Apollo 11. That's right. I think. But it did, yeah, the first shuttle flight had it on.
Yeah, John Young and Crippen were in there, down the bottom.
Distance speed S1 is 112, rotate 135. 3-engine climb is 143. If we lose an engine and you find yourself above that speed, just hold what you have. If you're below that speed, accelerate to that speed. Flapper track is here.
Most astronaut training is done with computers, but pilots must get the feel of the real thing. This Boeing 707 aircraft is about the same size and weight as the shuttle, and Brent Jett, who has never landed anything heavier than a fighter before, takes his very first training flight with an instructor.
My throttle. 80 knots. S1. Miles out from the okay. Your eyes are right. Here's coming.
The shuttle has no power of its own. When it re-enters Earth's atmosphere, it is a giant glider, known affectionately to trainee pilots as the Flying Brick. Many hours of instruction are devoted to the last few minutes of the shuttle's journey.
Fly the nose down, prep to the center. Stand them up. Switch them up. Oh, it's good. Time to ready. Here it's coming. 2050.
That's a good crosswind you were trying to handle over there at Lake Charles.
Yeah, I actually thought it was more difficult than the first time we flew.
Yeah, we didn't have the crosswind the first time. When you throw the crosswind on, trying to work the wings on this thing, it's really good. But you know what? It's once you're on the runway though, that vehicle, you know, the 135, it feels just like the orbiter does because they weigh about the same amount. And when you're doing those steering tasks, you know, going down the runway, it's kind of like when I felt you doing it the first time. I kind of thought, oh, I've been here before. You know, it's just what the orbiter feels like.
But it was still fun.
It's always fun.
Other aspects of the return to Earth are taught on a Gulfstream business jet, which has been modified to perform like the space shuttle during landing. Endeavour will drop from space at a speed of nearly 300 miles per hour and without any engine power.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Brian Duffy and his instructor take the Gulfstream up to 35,000 feet and switch the modified engines into reverse power. The jet falls at 200 feet per second towards the runway below.
Okay. Nav state's offset a little bit to the right. I don't know how yours looks.
Mine's the same, about a half a runway away.
Yeah.
We get the
doohickey up. Body type trail. Okay. 5,000. Radar.
Let's hit them.
Radar.
4,000.
Speed brake's working pretty hard.
It's good.
3,000. Boards.
Speed's good.
Boards come in 23.
And the pre-flare.
2,000 pre-flare.
Yeah, good call on the close. Yeah, 2,000. Okay, get arm the wheels. We're in the pre-flare. Gears arm.
307, max airspeed. 500, boards. Boards at 28. 300, 280. 200, 270.
Gear down. Roger, gear. Same coming.
Orbiter gears down, 75, 250, 50, 40, 30, 240, 20, 17, 230, 12, 9, 8, 220, 3, 4, 215, 210, 205, 2, 1, touchdown, flat, reset.
Christ. A little bumpy.
25 feet above the Earth, power is again reversed for a steep climb back. 10 approaches every training session. 300 before launch day. Since the Challenger disaster, astronauts' families have been encouraged to come into NASA to watch some of the safety training.
This is just our practice run. Then we're going to go over, come out the top of the shuttle. See
That
where they
looks
have
fun.
some.
Would they let us do that?
Well, I asked if I could do it twice. It is going to be fun. And what we're practicing here is if we have a problem when we come down and we can't get out the regular hatch, this is a way for us to get out in an emergency.
Well, how can you exit?
I don't know what you mean. We're going to climb out the top of the...
Oh, you are going to do that?
Yes, this is just our first practice.
You're going to climb out that window?
No, we're going to climb out a window you can't see, right up on the top.
And then what?
And then we're going to do one out the hatch.
On a rope or what?
On this same rope, yeah.
Why do they have so many spacesuits?
Because the one for the spacewalk is really big and really heavy. This one, if we have to get out of the shuttle, we can walk around in this one. You know what? I'm going to need to pay attention here because my turn's coming up, okay?
Okay.
And we're going down.
Yep.
When the shuttle comes back to Earth, re-entry through the atmosphere heats up the fuselage to around 1500 degrees centigrade. If control was lost and landing aborted, the astronauts would attempt an escape. There is no situation so bad that you can't escape from it. This is the key to astronaut training.
We want to welcome you to the Food Systems Engineering Facility, and today we're going to do a food evaluation session where we give you a cross-section of the flight foods that are available in our shuttle food system.
And we're going to have a chance to taste just about, a little bit of everything. Feel free to try everything, and you'll be able to make your own menu selections. I only ask one thing, and that's that you not order salmon or tuna, because it's been my experience that when you get a lot of people together in a real small area and you open a can of fish, somebody doesn't like the smell of it and they can't get away from it. So I'm going to be the salmon police, and no salmon on the flight.
There's several ways you can open this. One is by making an X, like that.
Another little trick to drinking with the straw. After you're done drinking with it, if you just don't do anything, you'll still have some fluid in the straw itself. So when you're done, if you just kind of blow back into the straw a little bit, and it blows the fluid back down into the bag, cleans the straw, and then when you clamp it up, you don't have any liquid to come out the end of the straw. So it just helps keep the ship neater, fewer things floating around inside. And we'll talk a little more about this in quarantine too. We'll talk about it. But when you make these kinds of foods, you always want to make them a little bit moist and wet so that it sticks together. Because otherwise, when you open the top, you'll have eggs escaping everywhere, and it can make a real mess. So you actually want to make it a little bit on the wet side. Okay.
The cereals are kind of tricky because they do tend to get mushy. If you're in charge of rehydrating the foods, wait till the last minute to rehydrate the cereals. Nothing magical takes place on orbit. Cereals still get mushy after you rehydrate. The granolas tend to hold up a little bit better than some of the other cereals that we have. These are very hard. Be careful if you're going to take the lid off. You can either fold it back, but if you are going to take it off, be very careful when you get to the end that you just rock it gently back and forth so you don't fling food everywhere.
Salmon everywhere.
Okay, I'll stick to the eggs.
Sausage patty, eggs, cheese grits.
Not nearly enough saturated fat in that for me.
No cheese grits today.
Oh. Oh, you pass it?
Pass them. They run around our neighborhood.
You can have all you want.
Up in our yard.
Oh.
Well, it looks good.
Yeah.
This tastes good.
You can send it back that way.
Foods developed for space travelers have influenced all our diets. The astronauts now have a wide selection of flavors to choose from, even on fish-free flights. Every minute of time in space has to be rehearsed many times on Earth. In their blue, liquid-cooled underwear, the crew are on their way to practice housekeeping and cleaning.
You're actually in your long underwear most of the time, so it's not that tiring. Sound like it snapped in.
Yeah, it didn't. It's this side, didn't it?
No, this side didn't have
Hey, Leroy, you got a second?
Yeah, what do you need?
Could you check in the flight data file locker and see if the deorbit prep books are in there?
Okay.
Leroy, did you happen to find more than one deorbit prep book?
Yeah, I got one upstairs and one down here.
Okay, that's good.
And Sharon says there ought to be 3, so it might be in, well, let me see if it's in that VW bag I just brought down.
Winston, get good. There's a Ziploc bag over there, right behind them. That's one seat. There's a Ziploc bag behind on the aft panel. On aft.
Everything must be stowed away. Any item left floating around in weightless conditions will become a missile when gravity returns.
And we'll be able to march through here, I think, pretty easily, particularly the first couple of hours. It won't be too much of a problem. But this, we get into the 1 hour and 40 minute point, and it's right after, hopefully, they'll have read up our pads to us. Then at that point right there, I'm going to use that as a line in the sand, or I'm going to, at 1 hour 40, I'm coming downstairs to get in my suit. It's going to take about 15 minutes per person to get in your suit and then in your seat and strapped in. If we use 15 minutes is a pretty good estimate, I think. So if I go at 140, Brent comes at about 125 or so. That gets us both in our seats in time to do this IMU line. Dan, because of your proximity over there, we'll have you, as soon as Brent's done, you're in next.
Okay.
Okay, and when Brent's getting dressed down here, you can help me, you and Winston can help me get in my seat, get all the straps. So we just kind of help each other as we work through it. So we'll go in 15-minute intervals where I'll go first, Brent, Dan, Winston, and that gets all 4 of us in our seats by the APU restart, which is 40 minutes prior. So we've got an hour to get the 4 of us all taken care of.
Here, the crew prepare for the most improbable of all emergency scenarios. If the shuttle cannot be controlled after re-entry, there would be a crash landing. The key to escape from a shuttle hurtling out of control towards Earth at 300 miles an hour is a 20-foot metal pole.
These straps secure the pole so that it doesn't float around when we're on orbit. Today we're going to reorient the pole now from its on-orbit configuration to its useful configuration during the entry in the event we ever had to use the escape pole during the entry. So we'll take these straps out. This is just a safety strap for ground use. And reorient.
Let's go the way in.
Everybody ready?
Yeah. Yes. It's flared.
Yeah, see, the foot has to get in there, or else see what would happen if we got hung up?
Right.
Because they use every inch.
Let's see. We need to come.
What are you trying to do?
Which way?
Which way? We need to rotate this.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
This escape scenario is not recommended above 40,000 feet. Endeavour will be travelling at over 300 miles an hour as the astronauts attach their parachute ripcords to the escape pole. They are then expected to leap out.
Okay.
And this cable has to go the routing of the orange one. Okay. Follow the routing. You see the orange?
It's got to come up higher on my shoulder.
This one, pull it down.
A second, I gotta get your O2 hose out.
Okay.
This follows the routing of the orange.
Well, it'd be better if they dropped it here in the suit room. They're not going to debrief out here. It's best to do it in the suit room.
Sure nice being back on the planet.
The astronauts remain strictly professional throughout all their emergency procedures. It is only at home with their families that they allow themselves to think about other possibilities.
Thanks, Brian. Hally ho!
Okay, come on. Got it? You know, it's going to be windy, so hold on
I
tight.
think that everyone remembers where they were when they learned the news that Challenger had been lost. And I think that NASA, as an organization, learned a lot about how to fly the shuttle safer as a result of that accident.
Mom, don't let me get tangled. Oh, well, never
It's
mind.
okay, just go ahead and
Never mind,
unreel it
just
the
do
whole way, and then we'll untangle it later. It's easy to untangle. Okay, Jenny, anytime.
When that kite comes down, it comes down really fast.
Also, I think that the people who died in the Challenger accident would want us to continue to explore space and to continue to push back frontiers. And there's always going to be some element of risk when you go into new environments.
Doing great. Yeah!
Which do you strive
You want to let
for?
Mom fly it?
Yeah.
Okay. You ready, honey? Yeah. Okay, got it.
The kids are aware that there are risks, and I think they should be aware of that. They saw the movie, I think it's called Destiny in Space, where the Challenger explodes. And after that, we talked about the Challenger explosion and how the sort of things that went wrong on that flight with the O-rings is not going to happen again, and that we're confident that things will go along well.
It broke.
KTRH News Time. NASA may decide on Friday what to do about a critical rubber seal which has shown signs of wear during the past 2 shuttle launches. On each of the last 2 launches, an O-ring has sustained heat damage. It was a design flaw in an O-ring which caused the Challenger disaster.
Not where my money would go. I don't know about you.
Onto the national news desk, you know, the guy who does the national news in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
This
Right
was
on
on
there,
it.
huh?
Yeah. There's a potential problem which may cause NASA to ground the shuttle.
By the time the shuttle is past the top of the tower, it's going 100 miles an hour. The shuttle, its boosters, and the loaded fuel tank weigh about 110 tons. The 7 million pounds of thrust push the shuttle very fast. Just 35 seconds into the flight, the shuttle is going more than 700 miles an hour as it passes through the sound barrier. Now let's freeze this picture. Here is the booster segment. NASA calls it a field joint that experienced the O-ring burn-through on Challenger in 1986. The hot gas burned like a torch into the fuel tank, causing the explosion.
When they looked at STS-71's boosters, they saw a little bit of a surprise. They looked in and they saw some heat damage to an O-ring on there. And they didn't know that. They hadn't taken that nozzle apart to look at it until after 70 had launched after it. Well, just yesterday they looked at 70's nozzles after they towed the solid rocket boosters back into the Cape, took them apart, looked, and they saw similar damage. So we're in a situation.
Same areas?
Yeah, same damage in the same area. Ever since after Challenger, we haven't seen any damage in any of these O-rings, and now we've seen 2. So that would lead you to believe that you know, something might have changed, and you better look at it and understand what the problem is before you go on and fix it if it needs to be fixed. And we've got some diagrams here, and there are a number of different areas where there are joints. The one where they've been seeing the damage is this one right here. You know, that's one of the most important ones because this is the throat of the nozzle. The hot gas is flowing right across that part right there, so that's the place that's most likely to see hot gas. There's another joint where the segments of the solid rocket booster, where they go together at these joints right here. We call those field joints because the segments are put together in the field. So there are 3 O-rings here, and that's about the size of them. And you can imagine having some 3,000 degree gas coming through there, and all you have as a barrier is this rubber right here. That's where we stand with it. I guess we'll hear more here in the the next week or so. And there are other crews, the guys that are ahead of us, that want to hear even more than we want to hear. So.
Brian Duffy and his wife Jan moved into their home near the Space Center the day before the Challenger disaster. Another O-ring problem has brought back memories for everyone. The wives of two of STS-72's rookies are eager to hear about Jan Duffy's experiences. She was unpacking her furniture when the news about Challenger came through.
We were building a house in Taylor Crest, and we actually closed on the house on Friday and moved in on Monday, and Tuesday Challenger happened. So I was stopped unpacking the boxes, and what do we do now, And I actually said to Brian, if you don't want to do this anymore, it's fine with me. And he looked at me like, why wouldn't I want to do this? They're going to find out what the problem is, and we'll be back in the air, and I'm ready to go,
I had no association with NASA whatsoever. And if I was married to someone at that point in time, I would have been like, we're leaving, bye.
I'm used to what he does, and I'm happy for him. It's really hard to watch the launch, though.
I watched it when it happened, and it had one certain meaning for me, and I can't watch it anymore. It's like, I don't like this.
I know.
I don't want to see it. I just don't want to see it anymore. But I don't want to ruin it by watching Brent and thinking that something bad's going to happen.
I know.
And I'm not going to let myself think about that. I just want to think about, this is Brent going doing his dream,
Well, that's what that's
he's so excited. I don't want to think about what could happen.
Actually, somebody said to me, what's it like watching launch? I said, well, Brian's been a pilot for 21 years or something. I said, but I'm not usually there for the takeoffs.
His chances of having something happen to him are so small compared to what he used to do. He used to land on a boat out in the sea that was going like this, and he was doing test flying where they were testing to see if this new thing was going to work. And he was doing that several times a week, That compared to what he's doing now, once a year.
That's what I say too.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Brian was a fighter pilot, a test pilot, and now this.
And I never worried about it before. Why worry now?
But Sue, it must be a little bit different for you.
Well, I think one difference is that if something happens to him, it's a matter of public record, and all the public knows. I mean, if your husband is sick and goes in the hospital and dies, it's a private matter. But here, it becomes a public matter, and that's what kind of bothers me.
The O-ring problem was located and fixed by July. A tiny gas pathway was found under the skirt of a booster rocket. It was quickly repaired, but it meant that the next few missions would all be delayed by a few weeks. The summer holidays had been and gone when the STS-72 crew arrived in Florida, hopefully to watch Endeavour's last launch before she is handed over to them. If the shuttle doesn't launch today, there's a rumor that STS-72 could be delayed for several months, or even cancelled.
Storm field was probably headed all over.
It headed all over, yeah.
Both our crews now departed the White Room, and they'll be leaving the launch pad soon. They're getting into the vehicle. They'll be going to their fallback area, their designated spot for launch.
Okay. It's met the spec at 1 PSI.
We're 2, 1. Booster ignition and
yes. There's a yes. Look at that. All right. Look at that. Isn't that something? Yeah. 7.5 million pounds. So are you kidding? Separate. Yeah. I don't know if we'll see it today.
They're already up in the haze. Yeah, we're already starting to.
Oh, it's amazing. All right. Every time I see it, it's spectacular. Oh, man, it's just amazing.
He's pretty happy right now.
I've seen probably 6 or 8 of these launches, but it's still just as spectacular as the first time I saw it. It's just I'm awed at the power. 7.5 million pounds of thrust coming out of the back end of that thing. It's just amazing.
You get to sit on top.
I get to sit on top of it. How about that?
You know, no matter how many times you watch them, I don't know about you guys, every time I see it, I forgot how bright those boosters are.
I didn't even look at them.
How many have you seen?
Yeah, something.
Well, there's a bunch of happy dogs up there.
Yeah. So I guess our schedule will firm up now. Everything will become official.
Time to get serious. We've been floating up to this point, but this kind of made it permanent.
Yeah.